I met Mang Ben a long time ago, perhaps as early as 2011, when we moved to a different village. Mang Ben worked as a magbobote, someone who earned a living by buying kalakal or used cans, plastic bottles, and newspapers, and then reselling them at the recycling station. Back then, he was just a magbobote to me, and I would relate to him only as a seller and nothing more. I was never sure if Mang Ben was just generous or if his computation was off, but I always felt he was giving more money than what I gave him. He had a wife who joined him in pushing his cart and in managing his finances when his vision became blurry. On the occasions she would join him, I was paid substantially less for my stuff, for she tended to give the lower end of the price range. But it did not matter. I still sold it to them because I believed one way to dignify them and their work is to support them and to receive what they deemed is the equivalent value of the recyclables I gave. One day in March of 2018, I noticed that she was not with him. I also noticed the grave decline in his vision. I offered him some cold water, and while drinking water, he talked about misplacing his medication to manage his blood pressure and diabetes, and how his fainting spells have just begun. I asked him if his children helped him, but he had none of his own. I asked about his wife who used to help him. Surely she could help. But Mang Ben sadly shared that she had left him for another magbobote. I almost cried after hearing that. I realized how broken this very quiet yet gentle man was. Mang Ben had serviced our compound for a long time now, but it was my first time to listen to him. At his age, he could only depend on himself to survive. Before he left, I gave him some snacks, and I watched him push his cart out of our compound. I remember one of the definitions of mercy during the year of mercy. Mercy is the willingness to enter into the chaos of another. While I was always in a helping profession, I never had opportunities to enter someone's chaos as fully as I was led into Mang Ben's. Can we enter the chaos of someone's life without giving more than food and drink? What more could I have done for him? That day was the end of our business-like relationship. I just found myself being led to a growing involvement. It just sort of happened. I was led and I followed, but I was still an outsider looking in, like we often do when we are viewing an aquarium. One afternoon in April 2018, I saw him sprawled on the ground in front of my neighbor's gate. How could I leave him laying there on the ground? This reminded me so much of the Bible story of the man that got attacked by robbers and was left for dead on the road. Was I going to be like the two men who walked past him, or will I be a neighbor to him as the Good Samaritan was? What would happen to him if I did not help? After reviving him, I brought him to a clinic where we found out that he had cataracts and a number of other health challenges. The doctors and nurses there were kind, especially after learning that I was not really related to him. We got his doctor's professional fee and ECG for free. I just paid for his x-ray. I found out more about his life as I filled out the clinic forms for him. His full name is Benjamin Saberon. He lived in the Bliss area of the UP campus. He was 70 years old. After buying his prescribed medicines and a quick meal at a restaurant, we went back to my house where he left his pushcart. His cariton was heavy to push, but we managed to push it together until we reached his shanty. I was shocked when I saw where he lived. His shanty had no roof and looked out into the night sky. There was no front wall, no door. The three walls of his shanty were really the walls of the other houses next to him and behind him. As it had just rained, his things were mostly wet. Left by his common-law wife of 18 years for another magbobote, and with no living child of his own, he was left to fend for himself with his growing poor vision. He told me he ate leftover meals that his neighbors shared with him, since his cookware always seemed to disappear. I posted a story on Facebook as Mang Ben Chronicles, and I asked people for help with his medicines and with his cataract operation. So many people have tried to reach out, offering leads to homes for indigent elderly and financial assistance in buying his medicines. Even the office of Vice President Lenny Robredo took an interest in helping him get a cataract surgery. But Mang Ben was fiercely independent and wanted to earn his keep. He refused to get a cataract surgery then, as it would interfere with his work and would mean less days for him to earn. He did not want to exchange what he had known as home for a more secure one with other indigent elderly. He was willing to risk the uncertainty of food and the lack of a roof over his head rather than lose his personal freedom and the relationships he had fostered in the community he was with. Looking back, I noticed that I was growing in my willingness to allow my life to unfold alongside his and not simply control how the narrative ends. One night I saw him asleep on the pavement as I was walking home. How could I sleep tonight if I left him there? Thank God he agreed to come home with me for dinner and to sleep over as the rain started to pour again. He said he will just go home tomorrow. Home during this rainy season is a parked jeep, since the roofless shanty he called home was taken over by someone else, leaving him to sleep on street corners until the jeeps at his area came back to park. He slept on the jeepney floor, often without anything underneath or a blanket to keep him warm, until the driver goes off again for his drive the next morning. He has lost his cariton more than once, for it was probably taken by someone else. At his age, this man had no permanent caretaker and no physical address. The few times I saw him and asked if he had anything to eat, his answer was mostly no. He firmly wanted to fend for himself, even though he was slowly going blind. He wanted to earn his keep and not beg in the streets. He relied on the kindness of others for food and for a shower. This is a man whose human dignity and decision to determine his life I was constantly called to honor and respect. Then an idea came to Mang Ben while we were having dinner at my house one September night. By this time, he had been eating with us on occasion. He said he wanted to go back to his roots in Iloilo. So during one of my retreats there, with only the names of two of his relatives and a street name to go by, I searched for his family with the help of friends and the trusty Google Maps in January of 2019. I went to 3 barangays around Iloilo, using the leads available to me. Then, not finding any luck, I wrote a story about him and shared it with Bombo Radio Iloilo, so that his relatives might be able to hear it. After 4 days, I received a text from a certain woman who said she was the niece of Mang Ben and that her mom was Mang Ben's first cousin. After verifying her story, we agreed to meet later that day. Finding them was a grand surprise, but an even greater blessing was that they were willing to care for him, even though he was practically a stranger to them. Imagine offering to care for a man whom none of them had ever met before. I thought this only happened in movies. I mean, what are the chances of me finding his family when he left Iloilo way back in the 60s? And what are the chances that his family would be interested in caring for him if there is no prior relationship other than blood? I was amazed at how Mang Ben's family can desire to serve their elderly relative without even knowing him. I told them that Mang Ben had a number of health issues with his blood pressure, his sugar, and his eyesight, but they seemed unfazed. There were a number of challenges to bring him back to his home, but we survived them with God's grace and with so many people's assistance. The goodness and kindness from random people overwhelmed me. Even those who were unknown to me were so ready to extend help, even when they found out that I was not related to Mang Ben. Just imagine what this kind of generosity can do if we did it for all the homeless and the needy around us. This is what it means to be church. Each one giving what one can give based on their particular abilities and gifts. It is to draw inspiration from God's selfless giving and also to give of ourselves in our own way so we can inspire one another to pass on kindness, generosity, and love. Love, after all, begets love. Looking at Mang Ben, I am awed at how brave he was. Brave for flying on a plane for the first time. Brave to leave behind familiar surroundings for the hope presented by a family he has never met. And brave to take a huge risk to reintegrate back into Iloilo at the age of 71 after having been away since the 1960s. I am grateful at how my friendship with Mang Ben humbled and taught me about who Mang Ben is, who God is, who I am, and the people of passion and compassion that we are all called to become. I am grateful to God for allowing me an opportunity to participate in this lovely pilgrim journey that is Mang Ben's life. Through Mang Ben, I got a glimpse of God's goodness and kindness to us all, even though we are limited or sinful or weak. His presence in my life has been so personally transformative and is probably the best grace I have received in 2018. It is not often that we are able to do works of mercy or participate in building God's kingdom of justice and compassion. With Mang Ben, I had a chance to participate in God's work, or what the poem says, the work of Christmas. This unplanned work of mercy, of making someone else's pain our own, had a happy ending. But both Mang Ben, his family, and I had to transcend our small personal comforts, to sacrifice a bit in order for him to live a little better. It led us to deepen our human connection and to find within ourselves a greater capacity to love. Making someone else's pain our own through empathy and compassion enables us to feel and imagine ourselves in their world, to see and feel things from their vantage point. Mang Ben awakened my capacity to enter deeply into his context, his chaos, so that I can have the opportunity to assist him, but also to be transformed by my encounter with him. So it is in a world of suffering that we are all thrust into the business of making good choices, of discerning life-changing options. With every choice, we have the option to make a positive change for those who suffer the most. How we live, love, and lead can potentially help the Mang Bens of our country. each of us can make a difference. I believe all of us have a Mang Ben in our life. Have you found yours? If you have been inspired by these Mang Ben Chronicles, please do not look away when you come face to face with your own Mang Ben. Try to enter into his or her chaos in as much as you are able to, and in so far as it helps both of you grow into better human beings. Who knows? Entering into another's chaos might be an opportunity to grow further into a human becoming.